All right, so the unit on quadratics, a quadratic is anything with a square. Okay, and here's the beauty of the word, you guys. Words are important in math. This is called a quadratic. And for those of you that know your Latin, quad means four. And what do we call this? We call this a square. So get it? A quadratic actually is describing a shape that is rectangular. That could be, it's basically like the area of a shape. Okay, x squared would be a square with both sides equal to x. So the area would be x squared. Get it? It's a quadratic, 4 sides. We call it a square. It's kind of cool. To solve, though, remember, you always want to get x by itself. And the problem here is that you have x squared equals 25. So you always have to ask yourself, what do I need to get rid of and how do I undo that? Okay, what do I want to get rid of? The square. Okay, how do I undo it? You take the square root of both sides. Now, here's the interesting thing. As you get older, you are more mature in math, you realize that there are actually two solutions to this. 5 times 5 is equal to 25, but negative 5 times negative 5 is also equal to 25. So I can't remember if they want you to do both solutions, but I would assume so. So your answer would be 5 and negative 5. Okay, so that's any kind of thing. So if you have a squared equals 9, just take the square root of both sides and you get a is equal to, cross this out when you find the square root. Okay, don't leave it there. To take the square root means actually do something. It's almost, this is the same thing as like this or this. It is an action that you must perform. So when it says the square root of 16, you do not answer it with the square root of 4. That's stupid. Don't do that. Okay. The answer is simply 4 or negative 4, plus or minus 4. Okay. All right. Next. Okay. All right. And this one, this is a little bit more complex problem. Okay. Let me move this up a little bit. I'm not sure why it stopped there. All right. Let's go up here. Okay. So this one, if you'll notice, 20 is not a perfect square. So let's talk again about perfect squares. Perfect squares are like if you do 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. 16, 25, 36. 7 times 7, 49. 8 times 8, 64. 9 times 9, 81. 100. Get the idea? So the idea is that you have one. Okay, these are perfect squares. Okay, and when you're simplifying something like this, and it says simplify your answer as much as possible, they do not want you to put this into a calculator. Okay, what they want you to do is simplify it as much as you can. So what you have to ask yourself is there a perfect square? It's these numbers, you guys, these are called perfect squares, and they keep going up, okay? That goes into whatever. Okay, so look at, you've got x squared equals 20. So what you want to ask is 20 divisible by any of these numbers? Well, obviously you can't go to 25. Does 1 doesn't count because 1 is 1, right? So does 4, 9, or 16 go into 20? And the answer is 4 does. So you break 20 apart. You go, let's take the square root, first of all, and then you get x is equal to, okay, you're going to get plus or minus because remember, it can be both positive or negative. You're going to break up 20 into 4 times 5. Now look what I did. 20 is equal to 4 times 5, but 20 is underneath the radical. You don't take it out of the radical. You leave it underneath the radical. We already did the radical chapter, so you know how they multiply. Okay, then the square root of 4 is 2. So the answer is simply plus or minus 2 root 5. I believe Alex will have you write it like this. Okay, let's try another one. I hope I have another one. Right. Okay, let me just do another one. Let's say you have x squared. Let's stop with x squared. Let's do something more fun. Let's shrink this down a little bit. Okay, let's move it over here. And let's do x squared equals 72. Okay, so you have to ask yourself, does a perfect square go into 72? And you might recognize that 4 does. Okay, so take the square root of both sides, and then x is going to be equal to, now break up 72. 4 goes into 72, so it's 4 times what? 4 goes into 7 one time, 18. Is that right? Yeah, it is. Okay. Okay, great. Well, then you get this 2 here. Yay. So you have x is equal to 2. Now you have to ask yourself, can you break 18 down any further? Does any of these perfect squares go into 18? 4 doesn't, but 9 does. So break 18 apart into 9 times 2, because 9 times 2 is 18. Then we find the square root of 9, which is 3. These are multiplying, so it becomes 6 times the square root of 2. And from that, you know that if you know your multiplications better, I'm just kidding, like if you knew them really well, then you would know that 72 is actually 36 times 2. And 36 is 6. This is when you know your square roots. I never knew my square roots, and I always had to go the long way. I was always so like impressed with people that could do this. But yeah, so 6 root 2 is the answer. All right, let's try the next one. Okay, now this one is, I don't want to say it's a trick answer, but a trick question, but kind of a trick question. You see this? It says x squared is equal to negative 18. The answer is there's no solution. You cannot have two real numbers. You can have imaginary numbers, but you can't have real numbers that get a negative value. It doesn't happen. Okay, so if you end up with something like x squared equals negative something, not happening. Okay, even if it comes like this, and then you solve and you subtract 4 from both sides, and you get a squared equals negative 4. Nope, no solution. You cannot take the square root of a negative number. When you do this, you're like, whoops, nope, that doesn't work. And the answer is that it's no real solution. Okay, there is an imaginary solution to this. All right, next one. Okay, so this one, take a look at it and try to figure out what's wrong with it. Like, what is the problem here? Okay, we're trying to get W. Well, W is stuck in parentheses and it's squared. So your first inclination might be to like FOIL this out. Don't bother. Okay, treat this parentheses like its own thing. Okay, you want to get rid of the 27. So think of this like this, like W minus 2 is equal to star. Okay, and this actually says star squared minus 27 equals 0. How would you isolate the star? You would add 27 to both sides. So you would get star squared equals 27. And then you would take the square root of both sides. Okay, so what I'm asking you to do is think of the W minus 2 as an entire quantity. Okay, so don't worry about the fact that the W's in their side there yet. Okay, we're going to move the 27 to the other side. And then you're going to get W minus 2 quantity squared equals 27. Now, the reason why we want it in the square is now we can take the square root. And then these two undo each other, and you get W minus 2 is equal to the square root of 27. Okay, add 2 to both sides. Now, you should remember from your radical I should put plus or minus 27, right? Square root of 27. Add 2 to both sides, and you'll get 2 plus or minus the square root of 27. Now, that looks pretty good. I'm going to shrink it down so I can keep adding. It's not quite done, though, okay? Because 27 has a perfect square in it. A perfect square goes into 27. You start going through your squares, you're like, oh, 9 goes into 27. So W equals 2 plus or minus, we're going to break up 27 into 9 times 3. The square root of 9 is 3. So W equals 2 plus or minus 3 root 3. Can you add these two together? 2 plus 3? No, you can't. This is one number. You cannot break it apart. You can't add pieces of the number. So your answer is going to be 2 plus 3 root 3 or 2 minus 3 root 3. Okay? Okay, let's try this one again. Okay, so you get, I don't like red. Let's do blue. Okay, v minus 7 quantity squared. Treat this quantity as a whole thing. So when you're looking at this, notice we don't have like a middle term with v. This made it all really easy, you guys. So the trick is to move the 24 to the other side. Change the sign, right? Add it to both sides. Now we're going to take the square root. So we get v minus 7 because these cross each other out. And then you're going to get, hang on, my cat is coming over here and scaring me. Okay, and then now you're going to get plus or minus root 24. But look at what goes into 24. Okay, what is a perfect square? Start off 4, 9, 16. Does anything go into 24? 4 does. So break up 24 into 4 times 6, because 4 times 6 is 24. The square root of 4 is 2. So that's 2 root 6. Move the 7 to the other side. So you're going to get v is equal to 7 plus or minus 2 root 6. Or v is equal to 7 plus 2 root 6 or 7 minus 2 root 6. And those are your two answers. Okay, and now you're going to learn something called completing the square. So if you look at this last one, this situation is a dreamy situation because we can take the square root and we can get v out of the parentheses. That was, look at that. That was powerful. It was in parentheses and squared, and then all of a sudden it's out of parentheses to the first power, and that's what we can solve for. So this little thing called completing the square is simply a process to help you learn a really cool way to solve quadratics later on. Okay, the method of completing the square is if you have a squared plus b squared, a squared plus b squared, hello, sorry. Ignore, whoa. Ignore that. Here we go, come on, Control Z. Okay, sorry about that, you guys. I'm just gonna have to X this out because I have to do this thing called lock it. If I don't lock it, I can actually erase it. All right, so here's the thing. What you're gonna do is if you have why do I keep writing a squared? I don't know, ax squared, thank you, plus bx plus c. This is a standard form of a quadratic, okay? To complete the square, you take bx, okay? You take b, divide it by 2, and square it, okay? So in other words, I take 12, divide it by 2, and square it. And I will get 12 divided by 2 is 6. 6 squared is 36. So when I complete the square, I'm going to change that to 36. This isn't a hard skill to do. What it is doing is, do you remember when you had like u plus 2 times u plus 2? And you multiply them out, u squared plus 2u plus 2u plus 4, u squared plus 4u plus 4. Okay, this is a perfect square trinomial, and this is actually u plus 2 quantity squared. Okay, so what we're doing is we are creating a situation Okay, like this. This is a perfect square trinomial. And we are creating this situation so we could do this cool trick. We can factor it back to that. Okay, later on, that's going to prove super useful. A perfect square trinomial means that you can represent the area of this quadratic with a square, and each side would be whatever that binomial is. It doesn't matter, whatever it is. In this case, it's u plus 2, u plus 2. In this case, it would be u plus 6. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Take the middle term, divide it by 2, and square it. Let's see if I did another one. Yep. So here, you're going to take the middle term. Now, it is negative 16 divided by 2 square. It doesn't really matter if it's negative or positive because, look, you're going to get negative 8 squared, which is 64. So no matter what, when you complete the square, that third term is always positive. Because whether it be negative or whether it be positive like this one, it's always going to be positive in the end when you square it. Okay, next. Here we go. It says solve the quadratic equation by completing the square. Now, this is a big process, okay? And it's exact answers. Okay, so there's the method to this. Okay, you're going to need to watch carefully for this, okay? So first, important to complete the square, okay, it's when you have an equal sign, okay? And you could try to factor this, but if it's not factorable, then you can try to solve it by completing the square. So first of all, what's really important is, and I'll write it like this, to complete the square. Okay, first thing, A must equal 1. If this does not equal 1, you cannot complete the square. Okay, 2, okay, you want to move. I'm going to teach you this way. There's so many different ways that people teach it. I'm going to have you move the constant to the other side. So, in other words, in this case, here we go. X squared minus 12x. Okay, we're going to move the constant to the other side. Okay, now I left space on purpose, you guys. And the reason why is because this is the trick. It's a cool trick. 3, we are going to complete the square. What that means is we are going to do what we just did here. We are going to take b, divide it by 2 over here on the side, not here in the problem. Just do it on the side. 12 divided by 2 squared. That's 6 squared or 36. So we're going to add 36 here. But you can't just add 36 to one side without adding it to the other. Do you see what we did? It's a really cool trick. What we're doing is we're creating this situation. Now I can factor this. And that is factorable. You guys, if I were to factor this like this, x and x, 6 minus minus, you would realize that that's the factorization of it. And that's equal to 69. So then, now we have the situation where we had initially, and all we have to do is take the square root of both sides. So we're going to get x minus 6 equals the plus or minus square root of 69. Now, does anything go into 69? Let's see. Let's check our squares. 4 doesn't. 9 doesn't. 16 doesn't. You know what does go in there is 3. Let's see how many times 3 goes in there. 69 divided by 3. 3 goes into 6 twice. 3 goes into 9, 23. So it's 3 times 23. So both of these are prime. There's no squares that go into it. So guess what? We just leave it like that. And then we add 6 to the other side, and the answer is 6 plus root 69 and 6 minus root 69. Okay, I hope I got another one. Yes, I did. Okay, by the way, pause it when you need to and review it. Okay, so the first thing is you check to make sure that A is equal to 1. So step 1, check, A equals 1. 2, move the constant over, okay? So we're going to move the 5 to the other side by subtracting it, okay? So we're going to get x squared minus 8x equals, leave space, okay, -5. Then we're going to complete the square. 3, complete the square. So 8, do it over here, somewhere on the side. 8 divided by 2 squared is, 8 divided by 2 is 4, 4 squared is 16. So we're going to add 16 to both sides. This, then you factor it. I don't think I put that on the other one. Factor, okay? And you get x minus 4 squared. Now, how do you factor it, you guys? It's always going to be this number and this sign, okay? Whatever b divided by 2 is, that's what it always is. It's always x and then plus or minus, just depending on it, divided b, right? So if this is a minus, it'll be minus. If this is a plus, it'll be plus. Okay, equals 11? Yeah. Okay, take the square root of both sides, plus or minus 11. And then, oops, square root 11, let's try. Okay, and then move the 4 over. 4 plus square root of 11, or 4 minus the square root of 11. And I believe we are leaving it an exact answer. See, when it says exact, it means leave it like this. But if you were graphing this, you would actually plug that into a calculator and get the decimal. And I believe that's it. It is for this particular video.